Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Ed Seaman, and I'm from Stenic, who are the Road Safety Trust's Media and Communications Partners. The purpose of this webinar is to help you if you're considering applying for funding through the autumn round, which we're excited to say launches today. We will provide a brief introduction to the work of the Trust, eligibility for funding, and talk about the guidance on how to put together an application. Before I hand over and we get underway properly, I'm just going to explain how the session is going to work. First of all, we have a presentation from Louise Palomino, the Grants and Impact Director, and Lindsay Eckley, one of the RST's grant officers. The presentation will last for about 20 to 25 minutes, at the end of which there'll be a chance for the team to answer any questions you have. Please, can you submit any questions via the Q&A function in the window? You can submit these at any time, but we will pick them up at the end of the presentation. And lastly, just to say the webinar is being recorded. Therefore, if you want to watch it again, you can do so, or if you want to share it with colleagues, we will send a link out within 24 hours of the webinar finishing. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Louise to get the presentation underway.
Hello everyone, I'm Louise Palomino, the Grants and Impact Director at the Road Safety Trust. I'm going to take a few minutes to familiarise you with the Trust and its work, particularly for those who don't know us already. We are a registered charity. We were set up in 2014, and our vision is for the UK to have 0 road deaths and serious injuries. And the way we contribute to this vision is by funding and promoting projects to make the UK roads safer. Now, this includes practical measures, research, dissemination and education. And so far, we've awarded around 10 million in grants to about 100 different projects. And we're really pleased to be the largest independent funder of road safety research and practical initiatives in the UK. Next slide, please. All our grant programmes have 4 common objectives, and these are to generate new knowledge about what works, to save lives and prevent injury, translate ideas into new measures, influence road safety policy and practice, and finally support partnership working and collaboration. And over the whole portfolio of projects, we expect to fund a range which in combination cover all of these purposes. However, your project may focus on one or more of these 3 objectives, the first 3 objectives, but all projects need to demonstrate the degree of partnership working or collaboration. Next slide, please. So who can apply? So the range of organisations that can apply is quite broad. You do have to be based in the UK, as the lead organisation does need to be based in the UK, and local public sector organisations, charities, community interest companies and universities are eligible. Further details on who is eligible are given in the guidance. Next slide, please. So this slide illustrates the variety of organisations that have received grants from the Road Safety Trust, from local authorities to universities to community and charitable organisations. Next slide, please. This year's autumn grant round focuses on inequalities in road safety, and there's an opportunity to apply either for a small grant of up to 50k or a large grant of up to 300k. And the detailed guidance for that is now available on our website. And the round is open for applications today, so that means that the portal is now open and it closes on the 1st of November. Next slide, please. So firstly, for those of you considering applying for a small grant, the purpose of this strand is to make a difference to road safety in a very practical way. So this strand is particularly suitable for local projects, which can then share their learning and making any resulting tools or interventions available to others across the country. The focus is on trialling, piloting and evaluating ways of improving road safety. And we've been really pleased with the interest in this funding stream and that we can help meet this need for funding for smaller, practical and innovative road safety projects. So that's why, as well as our spring small grants round this year, we're giving our applicants another opportunity to apply for small grants in this autumn round. So this round applicants can apply for between 10,000 and 50,000 over a maximum of 2 years. Next slide, please. So in this round, we're also running a large grant strand, and funding for large grants is available for research, but also the development of innovative practical interventions, or projects could be a combination of both of those. Eligible projects include research, pilots and trials, and improving, developing and expanding successful trials and interventions, and evaluation of projects and interventions. So this grants programme in particular supports our strategic priority of research that informs and pilots that test. So all projects, including research projects, should have a practical focus, either during the lifetime of the grant as an objective of the grant, or set out plans of how to get there after the grant. And we like that all applications include plans for monitoring and evaluation of effectiveness. And that's a key criteria, as we're really interested in sharing the learning. That's one of the most important things that can be obtained from the grant programme. Next slide, please. So in summary then, there are 2 routes to funding in this round, depending on the amount that you're applying for. And this slide just summarises that again there for you. So within this inequalities round, there are 3 main topic areas. And so applications should focus on one of these topic areas. The first deals with the impact of social determinants. So by that we mean income, health or other demographic factors, the impact on that on local communities and their exposure to risk. The second focuses on road safety and children with SEN and disabilities. And the third focuses on the use of demographic and other road safety related evidence and information. So taking each of these in turn, the first of these, looking at the impact of social determinants on local communities and their exposure to risk. Within that, we're looking for applications that specifically focus on one, or it could be more of the following. So that's illegal, dangerous and antisocial use of the road and effective countermeasures for reduction, rural areas, and in particular different age groups and the risks they're exposed to. And then finally, access to and use of technologies that make vehicles and roads safer. Next slide, please. The next topic area is road safety issues for children with SEN and or disabilities, and understanding what the issues are for them or for their carers, or a project could look at both of those together. Next slide, please. The third topic is around improving access to quality data, information and evidence to support practitioners in road safety to understand and address inequalities in road safety. Now, I appreciate there's quite a lot to take in there. However, there is a range of guidance available for this round, which Lindsay, my colleague, will start talking through in a moment. As I've said, there is quite a lot of additional guidance. So please take your time to read through that and get to grips with the various criteria and strands. I'll now pass you on to my colleague, Lindsay, who's going to provide a spotlight on one of our current small grants and then take you through some tips and guidance for writing an application. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Good afternoon, everybody. I will take you through an example, like Louise says, and then some bit more detail about the application process. So Foresight is a charity in North East England, in Lincolnshire, that works to improve the quality of life of service users and the local community, and building confidence and social inclusion. Through partnership working and information, they address stigma and myths around disabilities and enabling them individuals to lead a full and independent lifestyle. As a user-led organisation, they put the service users at the heart of everything they do. An extensive consultation with the charity's beneficiaries highlighted that many of the local people with disability have a lack of confidence and skills to cycle and walk safely. These modes of transport are relied upon to access local amenities and services, but the lack of knowledge and skills has resulted in an increase of number of injuries and casualties, near misses, and experiences of confrontation with other road users. So Foresight were awarded a small grant in 2023. Next slide, please. The Road Safety Trust are passionate about supporting local organisations to address road safety issues, and the application from Foresight demonstrated the need for their project and their unique position to make a difference for a key group of individuals. They had clearly worked with their beneficiaries to understand what they were experiencing and made connections with road safety professionals. And the charity had plans for monitoring the project and evaluating the benefits. However, they did request further support in this aspect, and so we were able to provide funding for staff members to attend an evaluation course delivered by RSGB. Next slide, please. To achieve their aim, Foresight are working in partnership with a group of peer beneficiaries and a local road safety professionals to design and develop a walking and cycling proficiency training programme. And this involves practical and classroom-based sessions and delivers appropriate and personalised support to disabled participants. The training content and the support will be adapted to suit the needs of the community, addressing the problems and the issues they face around road safety and their interactions with other road users. The project has been delivered in phases to small groups of participants, and after each cohort has finished the programme, they are asked to take part in a feedback session. And the best way they've found to gather these views was for participants to be asked a simple question and then for them to move to different sides of the room depending on their responses, and from there volunteers gather more in-depth perceptions. This information is used by the steering group to refine and alter the programme if that's needed for the next group. And the final developed programme will be evaluated using a mix of methods such as interviews with volunteers and a survey with participants. And this example demonstrates an inequality in road safety where a certain demographic have experienced higher risk. However, it is important to note that this particular project would not be eligible under the current theme. We do have a topic on special education needs and disabilities, but this is focused on children and their carers. Next slide, please. So over the next few slides, I will take you through the application process. All of the grants information that we're summarising here is available on our website. We highly recommend you read the application guidance document, and this provides more information about the round that we can cover today. It includes a definitions sheet for key terms and what we mean by innovative. There is also an application workbook for each strand, and this is designed to help applicants develop their applications with partners. And it contains examples of how to set out your aims and objectives, what outputs and outcomes you might expect to deliver, and also a template for you to work through on your own. For the large grants, there is a budget template for setting out your project budget. Next slide, please. So it's essential that you clearly set out your project aims and objectives and how you think the project will improve road safety. Aims and objectives are key criteria during our assessment, so we recommend paying close attention to these. As well as aims and objectives, your project must align with the theme and the topics set for this round. This will form part of the initial eligibility check, and it's your responsibility as the applicant to convince us that your project fits one of the elements that Louise described. Partnership working, as we've mentioned, is another key requirement, and we expect to see some degree of this in all the bids. The more you can tell us about the role and contribution of the partners, the better. Grant funding is an opportunity to try things and understand if and how things work for road safety. So demonstrating the difference your project makes is a vital part of any project. Evidence and learning for road safety is important. Even if it's a local project, it should develop or provide something that is useful for wider interest or applicability, and this should be demonstrated in your bid. And in response to feedback and through analysing the reasons why bids are not successful, we continually work on the application form to try and streamline the process. However, please note that large grant applications does have more sections for providing the greater detail that we expect about the project for this level of funding. Next slide, please. So costs are an obviously important part of your bid, and we do get a lot of questions about the cost and the budget, and we do ask for a budget as part of your application. Please make sure that this includes a good amount of detail, such as the rates and the number of days for staff time costs, for example. We don't fund 100% of the project costs, so you will need to find some other sources of funding. This can be from you as the applicant or from a partner on the project, and we don't specify an amount or a proportion for that match funding. It can be any amount, and it can include in-kind contributions too. The other thing to stress is that our grant funding is for project costs only, and not what we refer to as core costs or general organisational running costs. Sometimes we do receive applications which look like they are for costs for underpinning the organisation's main activities rather than for a specific project, and these are not eligible. We only fund direct project costs for public bodies and universities, so we don't fund towards additional overheads such as estate costs or central management costs that are not directly involved in managing the project itself. However, in some cases, we may be able to pay a proportion of these, for example, for registered charities. Please do refer to our guidance, and it has more information about the eligible and ineligible costs there. Finally, there is a free offer from us to provide funding for evaluation support, and this can include up to 2 days training for staff, and you can apply for these costs as part of your application. So please do consider whether funding for training in evaluation would be useful for you. And this training could not only support the delivery of the project, but also help some capacity building for road safety evaluation in your organisation. We also welcome you costing in external or consultant evaluation costs if these skills are not available within your project team. And in our guidance, there is a list of organisations that you can go to for help about this. Next slide, please. So we can give you all this information about the application process, but it's really useful to hear a summary and some top tips from one of our successful applicants, Dr. David Crundle from Nottingham Trent University, who has held quite a few grants with us. And he's given a list of these top tips, and I'll just give you a few seconds just to absorb them. Some of them are quite important, and it's good that it comes from a perspective of an applicant rather than us. And obviously this recording will be available after, so you can pause a little bit on that slide so you can soak them in. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, our goal is for grant funding is to facilitate the generation and use of evidence of what works or doesn't work in road safety. In this spirit, we ask all our projects to plan what outputs will be produced and how you will share the resources and the learning and the knowledge that you have produced. All projects should share the results and make them available to others, for others. And remember that it's sometimes just as important to know what is not effective. So other people need to know what not to put in place just as much as what they should put in place. At the very least, all our grant recipients are required to produce a final project report that can be shared publicly. We have a partnership with Road Safety GB, and they host all our project reports on a dedicated section of the Knowledge Centre. And also many of our projects have taken up the opportunity of presenting at RSGB conferences. There's quite a few on this year's RSGB conference. And so this is a good thing to include in your bid. And to support this, we have developed a knowledge sharing toolkit that projects can be asked to complete to plan their dissemination and communication. Along with this, we do have some resources to help with ways to share outputs and outcomes. And our resources to support grant recipients can be found on the grantee resources section of our website. Next slide, please. So the best place, as we've said, is to look at the grant section of our website, where you'll find the current round details and the reference documents. We, again, highly encourage you to read the guidance for the round, even if you have applied to us before. This is updated every year. And as we've mentioned this year, a key part of that is the theme topics. And that is especially important if you are applying into this round. Our website contains information about previously funded grant projects, and this could be interesting if you're wondering if your project is eligible or if it's something we fund. Take a look at our website. It has all the projects that we have funded, so it gives you an idea of what we are likely to fund. The slides for this webinar will be made available, and they will be made available on our website. And we are also offering 20-minute appointments for prospective applicants. This is where a member of the grants team will be available to answer questions, specific questions about your idea, the criteria, or any of the application process. The links for booking a one-to-one are now open on our website, and they do fill up quickly. I think there are a couple of spots left for Monday. But please do read the topic guidance before you come to those one-to-one, and put your project against those topics and be sure that it does fit those topic guidance. Our general email can be used to ask specific questions as well, but please bear in mind that we're a smaller team and we all work part-time, so there may be a delay in responding. Next slide, please. So I hope by now you're all eager to submit an application to our autumn round. And even though we provide the application questions by way of the workbooks, please remember that we can only receive applications via the online portal. The link to the portal is available on our website now, as the round is open. And on the portal, you will find first an application to register into our portal. If you've already got an account, you can just log in. And the first thing you'll see is a short eligibility quiz, and you'll be asked to fill in this quiz. And this is designed to save you time in applying. And if your project isn't eligible, it will let you know. If you are eligible, you will be automatically directed to the correct strand application form, depending on the amount you are requesting. So the application window will close on Friday, the 1st of November at 5 p.m. And we hope to make decisions by late January 2025 for the small grants and late February for the large grants, although this does depend on how many submissions we receive. So thank you very much for watching the webinar. I hope it's been useful. And now we have some time, maybe 15 minutes for a few questions, which we will do our best to answer.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Louise and Lindsay. I thought it was a very detailed presentation. You know, as has just been referenced, we're going to take questions for those who joined us slightly late. The way to do so is to use the Q&A function at the bottom. I can see a number of you have already done so. We are going to take about 15 minutes of questions, and there are already quite a few questions in the chat, so we might not be able to take every question today. But as has been mentioned, there is the email address and the one-to-one appointments coming up. Okay, so first question I'm going to take is a question which asks, we applied for a small grant earlier in the year, but were unsuccessful. Are the Road Safety Trust able to provide feedback on where we failed in that application so we can strengthen our next application?
Yeah, hello. Thank you for that question. And sorry to that person if they haven't received feedback from us, because we do always do that. Sometimes it gets caught up in spam filters and the like. But if you'd like to contact us after the webinar, we'll have a look and see what we can find.
Excellent. Let's take another question coming in. Am I correct that the grants can only be used for projects in the UK, or would international collaborations be considered?
And so it would be acceptable to apply as an international collaboration, and some of our larger grants do have overseas organisations such as universities as sort of part of the consortium, but the lead organisation does need to be based in the UK, and the key point is the area that benefits from the project needs to be principally the United Kingdom.
Very good. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Is it possible to apply for both a small and a large grant simultaneously?
Yeah, another good question. And there's been, I think I've seen a couple on this subject. Now, I think the point to bear in mind is you can apply for, as in theory, as many projects as you like, but when we're assessing, we're looking at that organisation and its capacity to manage those different projects. So I think that's important to bear in mind, particularly if it's an organisation that we haven't funded before, or one that's already carrying some current grants. And what we'd be looking at is capacity issues.
Excellent. Let's take a couple more questions.
Whether Tanya or Lindsay want to come in and add anything to any of those responses.
I think that's reiterate, think about which projects are priority projects that you would ideally like to see funded, because you could be in a position where we want to approve multiple projects, but we can see that you might not have the capacity to follow through with all of them.
That might be a good one to come to a one-to-one with.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Let's take another question, which asks, within your criteria, you state that we should not request 100% funding. What is the ideal percentage to apply for, please?
We don't actually have an ideal percentage or even a preferred. Every project is sort of looked at on its own merits, really. But while we're on this subject, it's probably worth saying that when we talk about other sources of funding, that could be from the organisation itself, and it can be in kind. So you could cost your own staff time, for example, if that's not included in what you're asking us for, or even your volunteer time, and include that in your budget as a contribution to the overall costs.
And also, I think to add, you can, state costs for universities, things like that can go in that indirect contribution to the project costs. There is no ideal amount, but we've had organizations where they've been very small, so we know that they can't afford to come in with a large contribution. So I think you should probably think about the size of your organization and your own budget, because we would probably look at that a little bit in terms of the extent of contribution you're putting into the project. But really the idea is we're looking for project partners to be committed, and one way of being able to evaluate that is them putting in either an in-kind or a cash contribution into the project.
Okay, excellent. Let's take another question, which reads, do you have to have a project partner?
The short answer is yes. But the longer answer is it doesn't have to be like a formal partnership. What we're looking at is that and how we think projects work best is if there is a degree of collaboration. So if you were a charity trying to do something road safety related in a local authority area, it would strengthen your bid to be working in some way with the local authority. If you're a charity looking to do something for your beneficiaries, your bid may well be very much strengthened by working with a university or somebody with expertise in, say, for example, behaviour change or road safety data analysis and so on and so forth. But it doesn't have to be like a formalised partnership with a formal written agreement. It's that degree of collaboration or partnership that we're looking to see. And we have made it an essential criteria because we just think that successful projects do need a degree of that.
I'll just jump in as well. I think it's sort of good to mention that the partnership doesn't necessarily have to be in the delivery of the project, as Louise has mentioned. It's sort of understanding what it takes your project to deliver impact, and then ensuring you have got key voices involved in the project. That could well be via a steering group or an advisory committee to ensure that the project can achieve its aims and objectives in the end.
Okay, great. We've got a few more questions in the chat. I'm going to take the next one, which is nice and short. Can a private company apply?
So we mainly say in our criteria, not for profits, but we do have some where we funded perhaps as a company set up as a consultancy or something like that. It's probably best to email us on that point or come to a one-to-one.
And I think another thing to mention there would be that the ultimate benefit must be public benefit rather than private benefit. So if it is a product that's being developed, you would have to show how it can be available to the wider public, not just a commercialized product.
Okay, great. We've got a couple more questions, so we'll take a few more before we perhaps start to wrap up. One of which reads, is it acceptable for a small grant budget to go primarily on staff time, or do you expect the budget to mainly be spent on intervention costs, for example?
I think staff time would be fine. It's quite difficult to answer budget questions sort of on the spot because it really depends on the nature of the project and what you're setting out to do. But in theory, it's eligible. I think.
Yeah, but as long as you can, as long as you can show that the staff costs are related directly to the project. When you submit your budget, we do ask for the wider budget as well. So you'd be showing us what other costs you are undertaking or other partners are undertaking for different aspects of the delivery.
In the application, we ask for justification of that budget and the costs as well. So that's where you can go into detail about why you are requesting primarily staff costs.
Okay, we've got a question on a sort of similar line, which I guess the answer will be similar. It says, you mentioned you won't fund 100% of costs. Would this apply if we were seeking funding for the first stage of a larger project, or would we need to request funding for only part of this first stage?
I'm not sure if this answer is going to answer that question. Whatever it is you're applying to us for, the project that you apply to us for needs some other source of funding, whether that's another funder in addition to us or your organization itself. either cash or in kind, even if it's the first stage of a further project.
And I think maybe just to add, if it is a staged project, you must be able to show us, it must almost be presented to us as a distinct project on its own that has measurable aims, outcomes, objectives, and road safety benefit, not just relying on the next stage.
Okay, great. So we've got a couple more questions. I'm going to take the two that I've got left in the chat that I can see at the moment that have been unanswered, and then we will wrap up the session, I think. So the first reads, it's quite a long one. Could a police force apply to cover some of the costs of police research staff to probe their arrest data and compare to Ministry of Justice prosecution results? The results could highlight current issues with legislation, and then with NERPOI or DFT partnership, double or triple prosecutions, massively increasing the deterrent against drug driving.
I think the topic sounds really interesting and eligible. I would just advise, in this case, this applicant to make it really clear why it's funding for an existing, if it's funding for an existing post, and just make it clear that this is work that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, that it's additional to what you would ordinarily be doing. So it's not business as usual, it's a discrete project, would be my advice there. That the topic does sound really interesting.
I think along this,
to the inequalities theme.
Yes, that would.
Yeah. But I think along the same lines also how that the budget associated with the staff costs would be managed and sort of be ring-fenced and kept distinct. And if you want to discuss it further, I think it might be good to come to a one-to-one for that one.
And we've got another question really with regards to kind of project eligibility. Can this funding be used to add street lighting to a dangerous road next to a community centre?
So for things like equipment, like we would usually only fund that as part of a trial. We usually only fund equipment as part of a trial into either something novel or understanding how effective something would be. So I probably think, unfortunately, just based on that snippet of information, it probably wouldn't be. But do have a look at the guidance and see if it is a wider project that you're looking to deliver. There's still, there still might be something that you could apply for.
I think the key word there is innovative, and I would look at the guidance around that. We don't fund general road safety equipment and signage. Things that the local authority should be putting in place, we can't give grant funding for. So just bear that in mind, and also bear in mind the theme of this project, which is the round, which is inequalities, which that one doesn't sound like it would fit under.
Okay, awesome. I am just going to pick up one or two more, and then because we've got a few minutes in hand, but we'll try and keep them quite brief and say any more questions that come into the chat will just have to be picked up via email if that's okay, and or the one-to-one sessions that are coming up. The first reads, can you use government funding as match funding?
So like a government grant or something like that. Yes.
I suppose that's what that means, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
Short answer there.
That's what we like. And last but not least, is there any limit to the amount of funding we can apply for in relation to the charity's annual income?
There isn't. We don't have a hard and fast rule about this in the criteria, but we do look at whether we think it's reasonable. And I'm really sorry not to be able to just give a clear answer or a ratio there of sort of whether 50% or something like that. But we're looking at, but we do look at income, capacity, and that type of thing. But we don't have
And if you're concerned, you can always add some information about that in the narrative if you think that there's, you know, something that justifies it, or something that we might be worried about and you want to elaborate on.
Okay, excellent. I think that just about brings us to the end of this session. I want to say thank you again to Lindsay and Louise for a fantastic presentation, and to Tanya, who's joined us for the Q&A session. As we've mentioned a few times, we have recorded this webinar, so the recording will be made available via the RST website, hopefully this afternoon, but either way, we will notify you tomorrow in a follow-up email, which will also include a bit more details about where you can find the guidance. And all that's left for me to say really is thank you very much for attending. It's been an incredibly well-attended webinar, and I think it's had some great questions, so thank you very much, and we look forward to receiving your applications over the next few weeks.